everybody. Welcome to today. We have another amazing interview. I very warmly and especially and lovingly welcome Larissa Allen to the Epiphany Show. And Larissa is another dear soul very close to my heart. She and I have known each other for over 3 years now, and it's been such a precious, wonderful journey for both of us. And she today is going to be chatting about a really real challenge she experienced for a number of years in her life, and eventually believed that she'd never get past it. And she's going to be able to share this with you today, and at the same time show how she did get past it. So without stealing any more of your thunder, Larissa, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you, Jenetta. It's nice to see you again. And hopefully people hearing my story will able to reach out and get help like I did. And that's the aim today.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what this is all about, is being able to share one's heartfelt story and make a difference. Even if one person, it makes a difference to one, it's one more than nothing at all. But I know your story is just so heartfelt that it has the opportunity to help so many people around the world. So let's get going. So before we met each other, what were you dealing with? Start from when you realized you really did have a problem. Where were you? What was happening? And what were you feeling?
So I was about, I would say 15, 16, and I was at an all-girls boarding school in South Africa, so I was far from home. And the school I went to had they had like quite being an all-girls school, there's quite a lot on image, a lot of pressure on image and what you look like. And so I started to fall into that mindset of my image, and I, without really realizing it, I began to care what I look like and what I look like and how skinny I was. So, and I thought, I also suffered from depression at the time without even also realizing. And I had this horrible, deep sinking feeling the whole time.
Okay, so let's take this in sections. So you're from Nairobi, Kenya, correct?
Yes.
So you were sent down, it's about 3,000 kilometers away to boarding school. And it was in an environment where all the girls were very competitive with each other as to how they looked, and their appearance was the most important thing that measured whether you were acceptable or not, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so you sat there in school trying to compete with those levels and those standards.
Yes.
And it left you feeling a sense of, what were you saying then? A sense of?
Like I had a sinking feeling, like a really sad sinking feeling the whole time.
So it never went away. It was always consistently there.
Yeah. And I thought if I could control my image and what I look like, that feeling would disappear. Everyone would like me, I would be popular, and that feeling would go away and I'd be happy.
Okay. Yeah. So what did you start doing to make sure you made those standards?
So I didn't want to be anorexic because I thought that would be too obvious. And then people would be on my case quickly, like, the counselor and my parents and, so I thought I became bulimic. I would go to meals, I would eat a lot, so everyone around me thought, oh, okay, she's normal. And then after the meal, I would disappear, make sure that no one saw me, and I would then throw up my meal. And this way, in my mind, I thought I would perceive everyone that I'm normal, I'm eating healthy, but I would never put on the weight of the food I'm eating. So it became a pretty bad eating disorder pretty quickly.
So, describe what it was like coming to meal times. What was it like for you? Give an idea of what went on. You'd arrive at the dining room and then what?
So meal times for me became a pretty horrendous ordeal. I would get severely anxious before about half an hour before a meal time. I would start to feel horrendously anxious. So more the fact that I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing. I didn't want, so I'd arrive at the dining hall. Yeah, I didn't want to get caught out. I didn't want to have to explain my feeling, why I was doing it. I just didn't want any confrontation as to why I was doing this. I knew there was something wrong with me and I didn't want to almost accept it. And if people found out what I was doing, I'd have to explain. So obviously it was like I had to put on a big act at meal times, and I'd have to, so that none of my friends.
Yeah, describe that big act. What was that big act? What did you say and do?
I would sit down with a huge plate of food and be like, oh, I'm starving. Oh God, isn't this chicken so nice? So I'd really like play it up and be like, oh my goodness, I've been starving. And so I'd really like focus on my food and make attention draw attention to how much I was eating. Like I wanted everyone to be like, Larissa is eating a lot of food. There is nothing wrong with her. Whether my friends even noticed, I have to this day no idea. But I didn't want anyone to know what I was going to do afterwards. So I'd really played up that I was fine, I was eating lots. I wasn't falling into this category of image because I ate so much at meal times. But I actually really was falling into the category of image and all that because I would just go and throw it up afterwards.
And then describe the anxiety levels, how they would come and go. So you'd walk into the dining room with high anxiety.
Yeah, I would say like 10 minutes before I'd actually go into the dining hall, it was the worst. I would like be, really, really anxious. And I normally I'd say 90% of the time walk to the dining hall on my own, so that again no one would notice my anxiousness. And then during the meal, as I was in my act, I was actually not so anxious because I was so busy acting that, pretending that everything was okay, that I wasn't that anxious. Then the anxiousness would return sort of as we were leaving the dining hall, because I now had to try and, make an excuse to get rid of, well, not get rid, but, leave my friends so that they wouldn't get suspicious as to why I was going, and I couldn't just say I'm going to the bathroom every time after a mealtime because they would get suspicious. So then again, that anxiousness and worry and dread, it was a real sense of dread of, oh my Lord, how am I gonna, pull this off again? As I went or disappeared to find a bathroom. So it was a real, from beginning to end of the meal, I went through so many emotions. Mainly worry, anxious, fearful that someone was, gonna find me, and but I also felt a sense of control, which is what I wanted to feel. I wanted to control, because I couldn't control the sinking feeling. I could control my body physically. So, and that made me feel good in a funny way, that I was in control of myself. So I'd say during the mealtime when I was acting and being like, oh, this meal's great, and I felt in control, and I felt almost good that my plan was working. And then again, I'd feel anxious and.
Okay, so then you'd succeed, and then what? There was a sense of relief, and you felt normal again.
Yeah, after I'd been to the bathroom and thrown up my food, I'd feel a huge sense of relief that the whole ordeal was over, and that it was a few more hours till the next meal time. I'd feel normal again. I'd go and find my friends and feel feel normal and back to schoolwork.
And then what would happen? Then the next meal time would start looming.
Yeah, I became very conscious of time, because I would, when it got really bad, I'd know exactly how many hours it was between each meal. So after, let's say, lunch, I'd be like, okay, I'd find a huge sense of relief and be like, oh, I have 4 hours until supper. But then as time went on and supper time came, the whole ordeal would start again. The whole traumatic anxiousness, walking to dinner in the dining hall. And it just became a vicious cycle, really.
Okay, so you survived that at school, and you got back home, and you came out of your teens. Where were you? What was and wasn't working?
I just never could get rid of that sinking feeling. I was at home, and then what actually happened, I started to get really sore throat all the time. And my mum would be like, well, it's not an infection, it's not a bacteria infection. So she then eventually took me to a doctor who did an endoscopy. And he said to me, so they put a camera down your gullet. And I had such severe burns all the way up my gullet that he sat with us in a room and he said, there's only one way you could have got these. And that's when I eventually told my mum of what I'd been doing. And then it got to the point I couldn't get out of bed. I had just given up altogether. I didn't want to be alive. I just thought, now my secret's out, everyone knows, everyone's going to think I'm a freak. Everyone's going to think, oh my gosh, she's so weird. Why would she do that to herself? So then through a friend, we heard of Jenetta. And that's when I started my therapy.
Am I right in saying you did try other applications before you got to the Epiphany Process? And they helped to a certain extent?
I went to a psychiatrist and I was put on antidepressants, and they just made me feel severely ill, really, really ill. And I didn't really feel any emotion. I didn't feel happy and I didn't feel sad. I just sort of was on it felt like I was on a conveyor belt. I felt like I was a robot. I'd get up, I'd eat breakfast, I'd do everything in the day, but I didn't have any emotion. And eventually I had a discussion with my parents and I just said, I don't want to live a life like this. I'd rather really try and fix myself through some kind of therapy, and work hard at it. And I wanted to get better so badly. I think that's the key. I wanted it so badly. I wanted to feel happy. I'd forgotten what that not feel happy, because when you know the process, you'll understand. But feel, I just wanted to live and
Feel okay.
not, not be controlled by this horrible thing that had haunted me. So yeah.
And at the time that you and I met, you'd recently had your 21st, hadn't you?
Yeah, so I'd had a huge 21st birthday party. Again, I thought that would cure everything. I was so focused on that before, and I thought, oh, look how many people are coming. They'll think I'm so wonderful, and you know, like I had a new dress for it. So I was like, oh, look, you know, again, that image control never really vanished. We had the party and it was really good and everything. And after that, I just plummeted because now I had no party to make me feel good.
And so staying in bed was where you preferred to be most of the time at the time that I met you?
Yeah, because when you're in bed and asleep, I used to sleep like 8 hours a day because I just thought, well, when you sleep, you don't have to deal with it. So it was my answer. I was like, oh, if I sleep, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to deal with it. So I literally would get up, I'd eat Weetabix because it was all that my gullet at the time could take. So I'd have a bowl of mushy Weetabix. I would sit and talk a little bit to my parents, and then I'd just go back to my bed.
Okay, and that was day in, day out until...
Yeah, that went on for about 3 weeks. I also went to the coast for New Year. Again, just thinking if I just do these social events, I will get rid of this feeling. If I am around people, and also I thought, you know, if people see me on social media looking like I'm having so much fun, there will be no problem. I will, you know, this feeling will go away.
Yeah,
Again,
you know, it's an interesting one. It's when we perceive that it's something outside of ourselves that needs to fix us, needs to be
exactly.
our fix. So what people think about us, what's happening that defines us, that seems to, when we're in that frame of mind, to be the thing that will fix it all. And of course, when it doesn't, we're back not only to square one, actually, you've gone even lower than where you were before.
Yeah, exactly. And I also lied a lot to my friends because I didn't want them to know who I was, like my real personality. So I just make up who I was. I thought, well, if I make it up, then, you know, they'll think I'm really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I also destroyed so many friendships, but I just couldn't see a way out of it. So I just plummeted really into.
And
into
Larissa, social media, that also controlled you hugely. Do you want to talk
massively
about that?
Yeah, so I got to the point where I was so obsessed with how many likes I got on a photo that it would literally, my dad said to me, he could tell when I'd been on social media because I would log on, see how many likes, and if it was really bad and I wasn't happy with how many likes I had, I would walk to my room, shut my door, and get into bed and not speak to anyone for at least 4 hours. And they knew it was something I'd seen, and I also couldn't handle seeing everyone, like, it seemed like everyone was having such a good time. And look at all these people, they have such amazing lives. Why is mine so shit?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, look, they're all at parties and having fun. And I'm
no
not.
problems, problem-free, feeling good about themselves 100% of the time. It's an amazing story that we run. So true.
Mm-hmm.
So you came to your first Epiphany session, and what happened in that session that shifted you within half an hour?
I think what shifted me so quickly was that the first thing you said to me was there's always value in negativeness, in the negative. And I was like, really? is there's value in feeling like this. And then so then we explained the process, and you said, you explained there's a line and you have to be in balance on either side of that line. And basically mine, I was going from one extreme to the next, from being really happy to really sad. And I just was like, yeah, that's exactly what I feel like. I go from being okay and happy, and then I go to really sad so quickly.
So that first session was helpful because you felt understood and heard.
Yeah. And you also you asked me a bit about my story, but I didn't, from the other therapists or therapies I'd been to, you sit there and you have to tell them what's happened, and you have to tell them the story of what you've done, what you did. And you only asked me a little bit of that right at the beginning, and then it got on to dealing with the traits and the emotion. And then I thought, yeah, I like this because it's dealing with how I'm feeling, and rather than me having to regurgitate what's happened.
You know, I just love you saying that, because I think I'm known as Mrs. We're not getting into the story.
Yes.
You'll always hear me saying in a session, wait. Don't want the story. Doesn't mean your story doesn't matter. It does matter, but in this session, it doesn't matter. And we're going to just gently peel it away. I don't want to hear the story. Story is what blocks and binds you to how you're feeling. And the moment you were able to peel away your story, you were able to start really addressing what it is you were and weren't feeling, and how to bring the balance of those feelings into manageability, correct?
Correct, yes.
So what happened after that? You were able to do what after that?
So with your recommendation, I would come twice a week. And you did say I could do it over Skype, but there was something about going that I really liked. It gave me a purpose in my week of I had these 2 sessions. So my mum would drop me off, and I'm not going to sit here and say they were all rosy. And there were some of those sessions I would go into, and it was really painful. I had to face a lot of hard things. I had to really, really address some of my issues. And sometimes if you do the process, you'll understand, to get to the issues, Jenetta has to be tough. And she has to be quite colly. And I would get in the car, and on the way home, my mom would be like, oh, so how was that? And I couldn't really explain how it had gone, because to say like you've been to therapy and therapist has just shouted at you, but it's helped. It sounds really weird. But
it's like a two-edged sword, because as much as I'm not really shouting, as you know, it's kind of calling out, and I go, look at this and look at that and look at the other, and it's being in that place of certainty. But it's like a two-edged sword, because as much as it starts cutting away the dance you're dancing and the story you're holding on to, because it's that story that one holds on to like it's a security blanket. I'm holding the banana, but it's like holding on to a security blanket and saying, it's my story and it defines me. And the moment these really specific questions start calling out that story, the story peels away. So on one side, one feels like, wow, this is really hard work. But at the end of every session, you were able to leave with a sense of lightness. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah.
A sense of, wow.
Yeah, and then I began to learn the process for myself. So I wouldn't just rely on Jenetta's 2 sessions a week. I would practice during the week with smaller problem or smaller stories I was running in my head, and leave the big stuff to do with Jenetta, because that was, I found, quite hard. But it gave me a sense of safety, like knowing I had this really good coping mechanism. I had this process that I could do on my own. I didn't always have to rely on someone. I didn't, and even today, like if I've got a really big story I'm running, I will have a session with Jenetta if I can't do it on my own. I normally get about 3/4 of the way and there's something that's I can't get past. But yeah, I think that's what really helped me, was having, I didn't have to rely on therapy for the rest of my life. Like I could do it on my own.
Yeah, I call it the top-up sessions, where when somebody's dealing with a particular issue, that's because dealing with challenges and issues is part of life. So it's not about getting rid of them and feeling all right all the time. It's about understanding that as they present themselves, there are some very powerful and personal tools that you can apply by yourself to yourself. But every now and then, when a particular issue comes up that is particularly charged for you, I call them the top-up sessions, because you actually went on to qualify with the self-mastery certification program, which you completed. And that helped you tremendously as well, because you were online with other people and working exercises. And although they're not easy, you also every week you come online with these amazing breakthroughs as you peel away more and more of your charges about yourself and life.
I think also when I started that self-mastery, I heard stories more horrific than mine. I heard people who'd been in mall attacks, had their family members shot in front of them. And I thought, oh my goodness, like it's not just me suffering. And there's a lot of people out there that have been through worse. And doesn't mean what I went through was any less, but it just helped me put everything into perspective. And I think the best thing about this process is that it allows you to feel negative. And I'm not saying that we should all feel negative the whole time, but Jenetta was the first person that said to me, it's okay to feel negative. And when you can see how that helps you in life, and it always helps, I didn't beat myself up about, oh my gosh, I'm feeling sad again, or why am I feeling like this?
Yeah, it's being able to ask yourself these very specific questions that help you to understand the value in negativity. As much as there is disservice in being negative, so it's not going around saying negative's all okay, it's being able to understand the value in being negative, as much as there is disservice in being positive. Because we're in a society that's quite addicted to believing there's more value in positivity and disservice in negativity. So the process helps one to understand, as much as there's disservice in negativity, there's value, and as much as there's value in positivity, there's equal amount of disservice. And when you realize that neither one or the other is more superior or inferior, then it shifts things.
And then pardon? Yeah, I was just going to say, then without realizing it, you can do the process. I can almost do it subconsciously, like it just becomes second nature. But it came with a lot of hard work. And there were days when I really, really didn't want to go see Jenetta, because I knew it was going to be brutal. but I really, what kept me going was how much I wanted to get better. So I'm very glad I carried on.
So where's it brought you today? What's happening in your life that's working for you that you couldn't even dream would ever happen?
So today, like when I had all at 18, I couldn't even think of a career. I was like, oh, I'm not even going to get there. So, but today I've done my PGC. I did that last year, and I'm now a qualified year 2 teacher. So I teach year 2. I have a boyfriend, George. A lot of you know him. I would never have imagined being in a nice relationship with such a good, nice guy if in the state I was in a few years back. So I have a career, I have a boyfriend, and I enjoy every day in the real world. And I can log on to social media and it doesn't even bother me in the slightest. I can even, nowadays I go like 2 or 3 days without even logging on to Facebook, which I would not have imagined 3 years ago. Yeah.
And in terms of your friendships, where are they sitting compared to before?
So I obviously destroyed and damaged a huge amount of friendships. Some good friends stuck by me, and they're really close friends today. The ones I've damaged, I've also tried to rekindle, and a lot of them, I think, not by me saying I'm better, look at me, I'm better. It's just been by how I've carried on living. I think they've seen the change themselves, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, Larissa, you have so much confidence these days," and so a lot of my friends are friends again, and hopefully the few that are still damaged will be.
Yeah, the nice thing is that it gets to a point where it doesn't really matter who is and who isn't, because you're just being yourself.
Exactly. And like when I was 18, I was so obsessed with like, look how many friends I have. Now I have a handful of friends who are such special friends. Like I really confide in them. And then the others, when I see them, we catch up. It's not like, and I think that's what's really come out of this. I valued my close friends, which are not many, and those other friendships. I also realized that they weren't really using me as a friend.
Yes.
So,
yes. So it's been able to give you that discernment in terms of socializing and friendships.
Yeah, because I'm a people pleaser. I like to please everyone. I want everyone, I wanted everyone to like me. And now I think I have value and morals. And if that person goes against my values or my morals, I have enough confidence to say, actually, I don't agree with you. And whether they still are my friend afterwards or not, it doesn't matter to me. That's it did before.
Huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes through all the time as I work with people and they start shifting is from session to session, people talk about authentic conversations. They start speaking from the heart, and it's not their talk with a person, even if they're calling the person out, but if it's about speaking their truth, they speak it not from fear or judgment, but because it's their truth. It's not to hurt the other person or because they're fearful of the other person. And so therefore you step forward speaking your truth. And I haven't shared in other presentations, but it blows me every time. When I step forward and speak my truth to somebody that I know I really need to speak to, and I possibly don't agree with what they're saying or doing, what I find happens is, because it's it's me speaking my truth, they have a little hissy fit and a wobbly, often they go off, and the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And yet, because I've spoken from my heart and not from a place to destroy them or judge them, or because I'm fearful of them, after a while they start realizing, as they work it through, that I was speaking my truth and it wasn't hurtful. And
Yeah.
and if they're in alignment with me, they're back very, very soon going, I get you. And then this even more authentic level of conversation starts happening between the two of us. And those that aren't in alignment with me disappear, and I understand we're not in the same value systems. So it gives me a spontaneous ability to have friends that are in my value system, that speak from where I speak from and understand where I speak from. So in the future, we can have conversations where we can agree to disagree without it being personal.
I think when I was 18, I was so worried about losing friends. You know, if I lost a friend, oh gosh, it was the end of the world. As now, not that I'm trying to lose my friends, but if I, like you say, if I have a disagreement with them and I say, well, actually, I don't agree with what you're saying. If they value me as a person, they'll come back a few days later and say, actually, Larissa, you have a right to say that. Or if they don't, then I just don't speak to them for a while, and it really doesn't bother me anymore.
It's amazing.
And I think,
so, Larissa, to end off, if we've got somebody listening to us today who are sitting where you were as a teenager, you know, it's a really real feeling and disease to be either bulimic or anorexic or whatever eating disorder one might be dealing with. Those are two of the most prevalent, but there are at least 6 common ones, 6 different common disorders. And they're sitting there, and it's kind of like, as they're listening to us, it's their dirty little secret that they don't want anybody to know. What would you suggest would be a best way to step forward?
I think it comes from you. Like, if you're desperate to get better, like I was, I wouldn't do it. If I could go back, I wouldn't do it how I wouldn't wait till my mum took me to a doctor, I would reach out to whoever closest to you, and I would just say that it's changed my life quite literally 360 degrees. And if you told me that 3 years ago, I would have probably just laughed at you and thought, what are you on? And also that you're not alone in that journey. There's people out there that will help you. And it is a disease, like Jenetta says. It's a mental disease, and like a lot of what I had was people saying, she's doing it for attention. She's doing it for attention. It's not for attention, I can assure you. It's not trying. Yeah.
Actually, the opposite. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would really encourage you to step out. It is not, I'm not going to sit here and say it was easy and that it was plain sailing, the whole thing. But with each session you do, it becomes easier. And with each time you learn a new coping, each time you, each time you go through the process and you feel light at the end, you feel you've worked through your story you're running, it becomes easier. And so to start with, it will be tough and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, but I call it mental and emotional daily gym.
Yes.
It's a workout. It's an actual
You'll
workout.
hear Jenetta say that an awful lot. She'll say you have to get on. And it's true. Again, it comes down to how much you want to get better. It's like if you wanted to run a marathon, if you've got to put in the training, it's the same with this. You can't just expect it to be better day one. Like, it took me, I don't know, I did 6 months of sessions, and then 6 months of 2-week sessions before Jenetta said, okay, you can go to 1 week. So it took me well over a year to learn how to do it on my own and to be on my own. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And even now, like when I have a catch-up session with Jenetta, it isn't easy. I still find it hard to work my process. But I would just encourage you to get better, because the other side is so much better. Where I am now is so much better.
Yeah, I'm so with you. Not that I had an eating disorder, although I had a 16-year-old daughter who was bulimic. But for me, it was getting through the loss of her to suicide. I just knew that I was prepared to show up every single day to that mental and emotional gym, because the option of living in this deep, dark, emotional hole for the rest of my life, I just couldn't manage it. I'd rather not be alive. And I knew that I wanted to be alive, but I couldn't live that way. So it's how much you want to get out of that black hole and work it through is how much it'll succeed. Because then when you're committed, there'll be days as you say, you don't feel like showing up, but when you do, that lightness, it's like when you do work out at gym and you come away going, oh, that was tough work physically, but I feel so much better. And the same thing happens with mental, emotional gym.
And as you feel better, you do want to go back. So after a few weeks, I did want to actually sort out whatever I had that day.
It's amazing. And so very well, and even your studies online, and it's phenomenal what you've actually been able to do, because you have turned your life around. You're living a focused, certain, clear, energized, very inspirational life because of what's happened to you.
Yeah, and I would say also, if you're worried about losing friends or family, I would just say the most important people stay with you, because the most important people in my life today have stayed with me every step of the way. And those that don't, like Jenetta says, they're not singing off the same song sheet.
I love that, singing off the same song sheet. Larissa, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that your story and the way you have been able to move forward has the potential to help so many. And I look forward to creating more and expanding more with you into the future. If you would like to know more about this and personally chat to me, you're very welcome to visit us on www.theepiphanyprocess.com. There's a confidential form there if feeling like you need to keep what's happening to you still close to your chest. Please do drop me a line. It doesn't go past me. And then you can have a very special chat with me and see how we can move forward. I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Larissa, thank you, and lots of love to everybody else. Bye.